time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, it brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing. Good morning, and welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday morning. I hope that you're okay wherever you are, and I hope that you had a lovely weekend, and we wish you an even better week ahead. Thank you so much for being here with us, and absolutely appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose here to be with us and read these beautiful stories, and of course, learn the many, many wonderful stories, many impactful stories that come our way. And we do have amazing people here with us today, with Traci joining us, Traci Huahn, and of course Michelle Jing Chan, who's now a really good friend of Storytime and has been here many times. So we hope that this is not the last time for sure. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you are all doing well. Remember to check in on loved ones. Remember that your little hello can go a very long way indeed. Thank you so much for joining us here. If you're out in the Bay like myself, you know it is a little bit cooler than it was last week, but we've been told that it will be warming up as we go into the week. So just to check those weather apps so you are ready for what's up ahead going there. And of course, if you need your sunscreen, if you need your water bottle, do not forget so that you are ready and you're taken care of. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We do have a very wonderful book to read together. And of course, our special guests joining us, the creators of Mamie Tape Fights to Go to School. Have you heard of this story before? Do you have an idea of what it's about? And I hope that you learn something, if not, of this amazing, inspiring person. And a lot of thanks goes out to, Michelle and of course, Traci for creating this wonderful book for us. And making us think and wonder what this topic is about. And of course, dive deep into the happenings and of course, what this means for our future as well. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Storytime. And of course, remember too that you can find Michelle at those handles on your socials. And of course, do follow them today and go to tracihuahn.com so you can find out more about Traci and her amazing work. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And of course, Michelle, who I hope by now you're already following and already know where to find her, michellejingchan.com. So do go there and find out all the amazing work, including the many books, some that we featured here on Storytime. I remember a while back when we talked about all the work that she's been doing, and that was upcoming, and some of it we've come to see here on Storytime. So find it at your local library. Ask for these books at your local library. Request them with your librarians. The libraries are there as a good resource for all of us. But without much ado, please join me in welcoming to Storytime our guests for today. Traci Huahn, welcome to Storytime. How are you doing?
Hi, Peter. Doing great. Hi, everybody. So great to be here.
Oh, good to have you. Thank you so much. And of course, Michelle, welcome back to Storytime.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again, Peter, for always having us. And good morning, everybody.
No, great to have you here. And I know, too, you're both on the West Coast with me. So I know this is early morning for us all today. Thank you so much for joining in. Now, Traci, where are you joining us from?
I'm in the Bay Area as well. So,
Yay! Thank you, Michelle.
And then I'm in Seattle.
Ah, Warming up in Seattle?
Thankfully, yes.
Thanks. So before we get we get started, and it's always I always say it's always nice when we have guests, and because they get to read and I get to enjoy the story, just listening in. But before we get started, Mamie Tape, who was she? Who are they? What's this story? Do you want to kick us off, Traci?
Yeah, so Mamie Tape was an 8-year-old Chinese American girl who, in the 1880s, she fought to be able to attend school in San Francisco. And this was at a time during the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act, when there were a lot of laws against Chinese Americans. And one of them in San Francisco was not allowing them to attend public schools.
Michelle, how did this? I know, I mean, you've done amazing work bringing to life those words as well, adding on to those words. So how has it been for you, and how did this, story resonate?
Mm-hmm. It was a really unique experience because this was my first historical picture book that I had ever illustrated. And when I saw Traci's manuscript, I was really impressed by the way that she brought this story of this historical person to life and kind of infused new emotion into Mamie's journey and made you actually feel like you were walking alongside her and her family as they were going through this battle. So the manuscript really spoke to me right from the start. And then, like Traci and I both talk about in our dedication, both of us are children of Chinese immigrants. And so, Mamie and her family's fight really resonated with me too, in thinking about the sacrifices that my parents and grandparents had to make in order to have us have more educational opportunities than they did.
Right. Yeah, no. And that's reading. I have to admit that I had not heard of the Mamie story. So this book has been a whole world of learning for me, and lots of questions of course afterwards, but I know that you two are going to be reading for us today, so I'm excited for that, and we'll get into that. And also while we pull up the reading, let's just check to see who is with us this morning, enjoying story time. Good morning to you, Kathy and Harry out in Ohio. How are you doing today? And you saying it is sunny today. Well, enjoy that sunshine. Thank you for being here with us. I hope that you had a good weekend. Meg, well, I hope that you're okay out there. Thank you so much for joining us here on Storytime. If you are here joining us live, please remember to drop us a message. Let us know you're here. If you have questions for Traci and Michelle, please do type them up, send them in so we can say hi to you as well, and also get to answer those questions. And if you're joining us later on for the recordings, please still do leave a comment, do leave a question, and we'll get them to Michelle and Traci for sure, and get you that answer that you may be looking for. But most importantly, we hope that this story resonates. We hope that this story inspires you to dig deeper and find these stories, very important stories indeed. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and we'll be right back after this short break to do the reading. And of course, for now, go and grab that coffee, grab that tea, grab that cold drink, whatever else that will make this story time feel better. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the other side of this very short break. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Davis. I'm a children's book author, illustrator, and high school art educator. I am the author of 30,000 Stitches, the inspiring story of the National 9/11 flag, illustrated by Sally Warren Comport and published with Worthy Kids # book group. One thing that drew me to writing 30,000 Stitches was the idea that people from all different communities came out to stitch this flag and make it whole again. So I hope that when people read 30,000 Stitches, they remember the power of sharing our stories. When people came out to stitch the flag, they shared their stories, whether about loss or pain or love. We all have stories to tell, and by sharing our stories and listening to one another's stories, we can create a better understanding of each other and create a sense of connection and unity. And this is what creates a more inclusive world. I hope you enjoy your story time with Mr. Limata. Bye, everybody.
Welcome back. Thank you indeed, Amanda. Tell our stories, and we're here to try and create that more inclusive world, isn't it? Thank you so much for joining in. And this time, we're ready for the story. Michelle and Traci, take it away.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Please go ahead, Traci.
Okay. So this is Mamie Tape Fights to Go to School, based on a true story, written by me and illustrated by Michelle. And these are the end papers, which are at the beginning of the book. You can see Mamie there with her dog looking out the window. And try to keep that in mind later when we get to the end. You'll see a difference. And this is our copyright dedication page and the title page. You can see Mamie's getting ready to leave the house. Okay. Mama always said, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I never thought I could be as brave as her and Papa, each coming from China to begin new lives in America. But the day I showed up at Spring Valley Primary School, I took my own brave step. San Francisco didn't allow Chinese children in its schools. Mama and I went anyway.
Though we were the only Chinese family in our neighborhood, my brother and sister and I always played with the other children. Roller skating, skipping rope, finding places to hide and seek. I thought school would be the same.
Before I could reach the door, the principal stopped me. Your kind is not welcome here. It felt like the ground had slipped out from under me, just like my first time roller skating. Mama said to pay no mind, we'd fight it. But I couldn't forget those words. Then I remembered, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. My journey was just beginning.
Next step. We asked the school superintendent to let me in. Papa said there used to be a separate school for Chinese children in the bottom of a church basement to keep us away from white children. The school board closed it years before I was born to stop us from going to school at all, though many tried.
Like a white reverend who preached to admit a Chinese boy, some folks got so angry they threw rocks at the reverend's home, broke the windows. Or the Chinese merchants who demanded schools for thousands of Chinese children. Papa said most Americans didn't want Chinese people working here, settling down and raising children who would need to go to school. So the answer was always no.
The school superintendent told me no, too. I wanted to throw rocks at his windows. Instead, we took another step. We hired 2 lawyers to fight for me. One of my lawyers told a judge the law gave me the right to go to school. I waited to hear if he'd agree. Some days, the journey really seemed 1,000 miles.
Mornings, my neighbor tutored me. I read books and practiced arithmetic. I didn't understand why some folks thought Chinese children couldn't be taught. Afternoons, I played with friends, reciting their schoolyard rhymes by heart. Sometimes I imagined myself skipping rope at school. I like coffee, I like tea, I like Mamie to jump with me. 1, 2, 3. Finally, we heard. The judge agreed.
But still, no school. The school board fought back. That meant another step. I waited for California's most powerful court to have the final say. It felt like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Everyone knew about my case. Newspapers plastered my name on front pages, next to words like heathen, barbarian, trouble, and disaster. I wasn't sure what all those meant, just that they weren't good. If only folks who believed those stories knew me like my friends did.
The year of the rooster arrived. Lanterns and spring couplets adorned Chinatown streets. Mama rarely shopped there except to buy foods like lily buds, fat choy, and bamboo shoots. For Chinese New Year, we always cooked jai to welcome good luck. Maybe that would help me get into school. I slurped up an extra helping.
The lucky jai worked. The court said I could go to school. Lawyers by my side, I walked up to the schoolhouse. The principal declared, "You must have a vaccination certificate from a doctor who's not Chinese." I felt like I'd fallen 100 steps back. Another step. We searched until we could find a white doctor willing to provide it.
Next day, fingers crossed, it would be my first day of school. Without looking at my vaccination certificate, the principal scoffed. "There's no room for you here. No more than 60 pupils are allowed." Yet the classes for 8-year-olds had allowed 62 and 70 white children. The principal said I could wait for a spot to open up. I didn't think one ever would. I felt like I tumbled 1,000 steps back.
The school board announced they were opening a separate school for Chinese children. Again. My lawyers explained I won the right to go to school, but the school board still had the right to keep Chinese children segregated. I'd have to go to that school, across town, above a grocery store, with no play yard. There were no more steps. I curled up in my favorite hide-and-seek spot, hoping I'd never be found. Papa shouted words I'd never heard. Mama vowed never to send me there.
Later, I thought about all those years Chinese children couldn't go to school at all. Because of the steps I'd taken, there was now one public school where we were welcome. This time, no one could shut it down. I reminded Mama, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Maybe the journey wasn't over, and this was just one small step in the right direction. I told her and Papa I still wanted to go to school.
The day the Chinese school opened, I walked up to the classroom. I was the first pupil to step through the door.
And so that's our story. And one quick thing I wanted to say is that, some of you, when we get to the end of the story, might be feeling a little disappointed as what happened. Mamie fought so hard and she actually won her case. And how come she didn't get to go to the school, Spring Valley, in her neighborhood? Well, that is because at that time there was actually a law that said you could separate people based on their race at places like schools or restaurants or a lot of other different places. And because of that, the school board was able to get around, even though Mamie won the case. And there was no Chinese separate school at the time Mamie won. And so that's why the court ordered her to be allowed into her neighborhood school. But very quickly, in about 3 days' time, the school board turned around and set up the segregated school. And that's why they were allowed to force Mamie to go there once that school was open. And it took a very long time and many years, but the steps of many, many other brave people, many brave children and their families before segregated schools were outlawed. But and Mamie, we thank Mamie for being one of the people on that long journey.
Yeah, no, great story. Thank you. And I don't know if you had any more that you wanted to share about that as well. But I had a question that was coming. And for you, Traci, maybe in particular, thinking with, the law and having, being a lawyer yourself. So thinking about that and how can you explain things like this to, a layman like myself, for example, because we know that the law is there to protect us. The law should be there to be protecting us and making sure that every citizen's rights, every person's rights are respected and upheld. But then it feels like there's always loopholes or something that then is found. So should we trust? Should we, as the masses, believe in the law? I know it's a heavy question, but
Yeah. It's a good way to wake up in the morning. Yeah, I mean, I think we do want to have some trust in the law, but I think we need to know that sometimes laws are not fair. And when that's the case, we should challenge them, you know, like just like Mamie, the law at that time was that Chinese kids couldn't go to school. And so, you know, they fought against that, right? So although there are laws that, you know, like we do want to respect, but other times there are laws that, you know, inherently are unfair, right? And I think in that case, be brave, you know, and we should stand up and fight for what we know is right, for what's justice.
Right, right. No, appreciate that. And then, you know, Michelle, I don't know if you have anything to share on that as well, but just also thinking, that would be, why did you want to be a part of this story or telling of this story? I know, you know, so yeah, if you want to share about that.
Yeah, I guess similar to you, Peter, I hadn't heard about Mamie Tape until recently. I think it was only a couple years ago, during all of the anti-Asian hate crimes and during the pandemic, where an organization I follow was sharing some graphics about historical figures in Asian American history that were more overlooked by mainstream media. And that was the first time I learned about Mamie. So, you know, I had never learned about her in history class or heard her name growing up. And I, as I said earlier, was really taken by Traci's manuscript and how she brought new life and emotion to this story of this historical figure. So, yeah, that's what drew me to the manuscript. It was very important to me to get to be a part of this story and help to bring Mamie's journey to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And
No.
Michelle did if I can, just
No,
Michelle did a wonderful
absolutely.
job with, incorporating so many historic details and just, you know, making the characters very approachable and kid friendly too, to bring some levity as well to this serious topic.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, you know, you mentioned bringing levity to it. And also, I know that with research like this, and Traci, you did mention at the outset, you said, the end of the book may not be what you're expecting or what you're thinking, and it might maybe leave you feeling, well, you know, what really happened, why did she not go to school? So just thinking, like, how was the research for this material for you, and how did that leave you feeling, you know, how you must have gone through this whole process yourself in coming.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you know, when I initially found out about Mamie's case, you know, I just kind of on a very surface level, and it's not till I did dig deeper that I really realized the nuances. Like, it was through newspaper articles that I realized, like, how the principal, you know, demanded the vaccination certificate, or how had the reason of, like, oh, there's too many students already. So that wasn't something that was in some of the initial things I found. And so finding those, that was actually part of the reason why I decided to frame this story with the idea of a journey of 1,000 miles. Begins with a single step, because I started really seeing all the steps, and it was like the 2 steps forward, 1 step back that happened with Mamie. And then putting that in the larger context of the fight, you know, for school equality, was like, oh, that is like really how the whole process went, right? And Mamie being one step in that whole process. So
Right. Yeah.
hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Absolutely. Yeah. And just, Michelle, I don't know if you had anything to add to that, or just also thinking in, you know, with this story, one of the things is thinking is, well, you mentioned there's a particular piece that you mentioned about family, right? You mentioned she saw these words in the newspapers about herself that she didn't even understand, and then her dad said something, and her mom said something, and I think that's just a glimpse into what effect those situations had on families as well. Whereas, do we just follow this law? Do we just, you know, live quietly? How are we, you know, being brave? How do we show up? So just wondering about this as well. And have you had, you know, like, how have been your experiences as well in dealing with issues like this? You know, because I feel like it didn't end then. We still have those effects reaching to this day. So how has that shaped your own lives? Have you had to navigate certain things to, you know, to find yourself in spaces where maybe we might be considered, well, you don't fit, or you know, you can't be here, author, illustrator, or whatever it is. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about on the show before, Peter, I grew up in a town in Colorado that was pretty religious, pretty conservative, pretty homogenous. So I was like one of the only Asian kids and one of the only POC in my entire school growing up.
Mm.
And when I was younger, my brother and I did get bullied for being Asian in school, and so I think that part of Mamie's story did resonate with me as well. And like you said, kind of. Uniting as a family and finding your community in that when you couldn't find it in your school among your peers. I think that aspect of Mamie's story really resonated with me as well. And something I learned from reading Traci's manuscript was, just how much of kind of like a family fight this was, where her parents were walking alongside her, and
Mm.
she had younger siblings who I'm sure were kind of following along to some degree as she was going through all of these different steps and these different challenges.
Right. Yeah, Traci, I don't know. How about you, your experience and how it all ties in, and maybe decisions that you've had to make you and your family, maybe.
Yeah. So, the latter part of my childhood, I grew up in a more white spaces, and I'll say, and I remember being teased, especially like walking home from school.
Mm.
And that actually is part of also what inspired me when I
Mm.
learned about Mamie, and to think like this 8-year-old, was so brave, right? To go show up at a school where she wasn't allowed, and then to keep going back,
Mm.
right? That, I mean,
Mm.
that's something to go once, but to keep going back to,
Right.
that's really so brave. Because I remember for me as a kid, I don't know, I was just almost like paralyzed, where I never said anything back. I never even told anybody, never even told my family, like, that I was teased or anything like that.
Mm.
And so I think that was just inspiring, just to see how Mamie at 8 years old, right, was really so brave.
Hmm. And just you mentioned something in there too, and like, oh, but probably I didn't at 8 years old, I didn't speak back. I might not do this, but from my understanding, and please correct me if like wrong, but from my understanding, I feel like is African culture, Asian culture, and I feel like non-white culture generally meets in that. I think overlaps in that, like the pride is in, oh, you're respectful, you're quiet, you don't do this, and so how do you encourage little ones to still find that energy and come out of that, and like still be able to advocate for themselves?
Yeah, I think, well, I do think, I feel like maybe today, the younger kids, I do see a lot of younger people being more active and more vocal, which is really
Mm.
great and encouraging. And so I would say, it's hard. It is hard, but to really just, you know, really just stand up for what you believe in. I mean, like, right, like really try to find that space. You can always also ask for help, right? You can
Mm.
go to an adult in your life, or another friend. Sometimes there's more strength in numbers, right? So if you have a buddy, and together, right, you can also stand up. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Traci on that, and I think, I the types of stories that are being published now, where more kids can see themselves reflected and see more examples of, activism and for standing up for yourself and what you believe in. My hope is that reading those types of stories will give kids the courage to do the same in their own lives. But
Mm.
yeah, I just also wanted to add, I think that was something that stuck with me too with this story was, that it always feels dehumanizing when you are told that you don't belong somewhere. And
Mm.
it's hard in the moment sometimes to
Mm.
come up with what to say and have the words
Mm.
to sort of fight back. There's so many times where, I look back at a microaggression and I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have said that. But at the time, you just don't have the words. And so I agree with Traci that I think that was something very powerful about Mamie's story, that even though she didn't quite understand necessarily all of the insults and horrible things people were saying
Mm.
about her, that she and her family continued to fight back and stand up for what they
Mm.
believed in.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that. And just a reminder, too, to everybody that is joining us, whether you're joining us live right now or joining us later on for the recordings, that we are joined today by Michelle Jing Chan. And oh, did I miss? Look at me.
I'm like, that's not Michelle.
Oh my goodness, look at me. Let's stick with this one then. Oh my goodness. Well, we're joined by Traci Huahn and Michelle Jing Chan. Of course, the creators of Mamie Tape Fights to Go to School. And please find them at their socials, which I have the pictures switched back, but we'll make sure that we put the right graphics up for you later on the Storytime platforms. But do find them, and please just follow this work. As you can see, it's such an important topic, such important stories we need to tell, right? If we've gone through school and we've not learned these stories, there's something wrong with the system, and we need to change that. So thank you for being here with us. And yeah, just a reminder of who is here with us. And please remember to join them at the those handles that we put up earlier. And I'll make sure to correct that as well.
No worries. Thanks, Peter.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned, I think both of you kind of alluded to it, was, you know, finding that adult or somebody to help and so on. And I think it's this idea of allyship. And, you know, you mentioned in the book, there's the Reverend who's, you know, his house is broken, or, you know, like, so just wondering too, like, how can we be allies in general? And also to like, how can we highlight that good work that is happening from those supports in this situation? One example being, say, that Reverend and what voicing out what they did, even though it was not, you know, the popular thought of the time.
Yeah. I think I need a minute.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say, I think in any situation, you know, there are always people who are willing to help. I think so it is just to look for those people, right? To try to look for the people who are helping. And I guess I guess the question being, how can we be better allies, or how to?
Yeah. Like, how can we be better allies? Because you know, sometimes we may not be in that situation ourselves, and sometimes, you know, and even just this umbrella, just thinking, for example, this umbrella of Asian American, like, what is that? There's a whole lot of different makeups in there. So how do we still understand what the other person is going through?
Yeah, well, I do think, I mean, actually, books are one great way, you know, to kind of step into the shoes of other people, right? Read, like what you do, Peter. I mean, by spreading the word about so many different kinds of books, we can learn the stories of so many different people who are like us, and help us feel seen, but also people who are not like us. That really give us a window, right, into another experience, and helps build our level of empathy and compassion for people who are different than us. So I think, especially with kids, that's a really great way to help build that mindset of allyship and connection with other people.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think even as an adult reading picture books, I've learned so much about different cultures and groups that, you know, I'm not a part of. But I think that the best examples of allyship start with just listening and decentering yourself in your own experiences. And, you know, listening to people from other marginalized groups that you're not a part of, and letting them kind of take the front seat and tell you about their experiences and tell you about the different challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And just, you know, going out and trying to connect, whether it's different community events or, you know, just being more connected with a wide variety of people, I think is great too.
Yeah, no, I love that. And just another thing too that I was thinking about was we hear this story, or we're listening to this story from Mamie's perspective. What was the thinking behind that? And maybe for you, Michelle, too, like, how did that change your approach to your illustrations?
Yeah, so I decided to write it from Amy's point of view because I really wanted to draw children into the experience on a much more immediate and close level, rather than it being more of like a textbook, type story. And so I really wanted to bring that emotional level in and have them kind of like walking, like as Michelle was saying, like walking alongside Mamie. And so that was the idea really behind that.
Yeah, no, it was because I was there are many, over the time I read books that are from different perspectives, and it was just interesting to hear it from that. It really it gave the story a very different feel, which I think was very important in highlighting this little girl's strength.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I appreciate that. Michelle, how about you? How did that whole, like how did it all play into your process?
Yeah, I think, well, again, I have to credit Traci with the manuscript and the way that she brought the story to life with her words. But I think I tried to use that and use those little moments of joy and like just moments of Mamie just being a regular child in the manuscript to show that in the art. So, small moments of her playing with her siblings and the neighborhood kids, or like playing with the little rooster puppets in Chinatown for Lunar New Year, things like that, to show that, amidst all of this challenge, she was still a kid. And that, to really drive home the point that Traci made earlier, where this was an 8-year-old who was making all these brave steps and putting herself out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I feel like threads through the entire book was this idea of, incremental progress. And it's hard to, because I feel like when you're living it, like I said, wash pot never boils, right? Like you're living through it, you're not seeing it. And so I was just thinking as I looked at the manuscript before the arc, I was just thinking, it's like, there's so many examples of that. And I remember one professor one time telling me, or what the class, but they said, people tend to say, oh, children nowadays, they don't understand this, they don't understand that. But then he went on to explain, he's like, tell me how many high school kids can you now tell to say, sit in the back of the bus, and they would do that? Or what do you think their reaction would be? And so he's saying, we all have a role to play, whether it's upholding what has been fought for or indeed moving it forward in other ways. And so just thinking about this incremental progress, what are your thoughts? So, like what do you have on it? Do we, is it something that we appreciate? Is it something that, we should be appreciating, as you highlighted in the book?
Yeah, I think like you're saying, in a way, it's probably maybe not as appreciated in the moment. And that's interesting because, I had a chance to spend time with Mamie Tape's great granddaughter. And she spent part of her childhood growing up with Mamie, but Mamie actually never talked about this history. So the great granddaughter did actually not know about it until after Mamie had passed away. So, and even though Mamie lived to be 96, but I think for her, because what she lived in the moment, it wasn't a victory to her, right? Even though she won her case, because she didn't get to go to that school. So I think sometimes that wisdom does come in hindsight. But I think, and that was part of what I hope is a message of this book, though, for kids today, is that, sometimes change, or oftentimes change comes really slowly, but every little step counts. It's all those little steps. So keep on taking those little steps, right? We may not see the result of all of our effort immediately, but collectively, right, over a long time and with others, we can see some real change, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Peter.
No, that was just the same wavelength.
Great. Same page. But yeah, and I was also going to add that I think, the story is a great companion alongside other stories of folks from marginalized groups who, went through similar struggles at different times to have to be treated equally in schools and restaurants and institutions. So things like Brown versus Board of Education. I know this case was sort of a stepping stone for that later. And then the story of, I believe it's Sylvia Mendez.
Yes,
yeah. Yes. That's another example too. So I think that was something else that, I learned while working on this story is all the kind of cross community solidarity here, even though, these people didn't necessarily meet and these cases happened at different times. Like Traci said, all of these actions from these change makers adding up over time to something bigger.
Yeah, and I think an important thing to notice too is that, it was really the efforts of a lot of marginalized groups together. So like, before Mamie's time too, like Black families were fighting and won the right, still also at segregated schools, but to attend public schools. And so, there's a lot of work that we can do together too, right? Build more allyship together, because the whole, like when we look at the school desegregation, there was a lot of different groups actually doing the work.
Yeah. And as someone like I working in the school systems right now, in the school in the schools, I feel like you still see a lot of segregations, like in just whatever the terms may be, whether this is predominantly this, it's predominantly like you find this, and so just wondering too, like, is it possible to get real integration, or indeed to get and I think it's all big questions right now because we think of the funding sources. So
I wish I had the answer to that, but yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not legal segregation, but definitely there is a lot of geographic, and then because of that, there's inequities in funding and things like that. So it's still a lot of work to be done, I guess.
Right. No, absolutely. And this journey continues, right? Like the spirit of the book, that message, like this continues. We can't stop but also I think it is important, as you outlined, to look back and see the progress that has been made or that is being made. I think it's I appreciate that so much. What would you want to see, already you've educated one through this, at least just know you've educated one right here. But also, what would you like to see for Mamie moving forward, or for this story?
I would love for this story to really be incorporated into as many schools as possible. I think it's a great history and story for kids, and it fits in, with a lot of curriculum. And so, yeah, I'd really like to see it integrated in that way.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Michelle, how about you?
Yeah, I would echo the same thing. And I would also say, alongside books that talk about some of the other figures who we mentioned earlier, I actually did look up a couple picture books also related to desegregation when I was illustrating this. So I think, all of those are great companions to each other, and help paint this larger picture of the fight across multiple different communities for desegregation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And also just too, I think even one of the things and with being immersed in the picture book world and so on, and you see, like, I think one of the things, of course, is publishers like trying to get more of these stories out. And I'm always appreciative really when I see a story like this be published with such a big publishing house, because I think there is a responsibility there that is there upon these houses to really put stories out there that need to be out there. And so I think just a big thank you, but of course too, like you're saying, more work to be done, right? So what's next for you? Or I know that this just just came out, and anything else? Did I hear somebody say a series? Other people?
No, yeah, I have things in the works, but nothing to announce yet. But
Yeah.
yeah, look for me later.
Yeah.
And
Well, we
Traci,
hope to see you at the library, or we hope to see you at the next, like out of school near us or something.
Yeah. So yeah, actually, I am going to be doing school visits. So 2024 to 25 school year. Peter has the contact information for me
Yeah.
that he's sharing up. But yeah, I'm definitely. I've done some school visits. I did quite a few in May, and looking forward to doing more. And I'm available to book now. So yeah, would love to
Yeah.
come out to your school and share more about this history and Mamie's story, and interact with the kids. So.
Yeah. Well, Traci, one of the things is like you've done some school visits. So take a minute to think about what are some highlights from those school visits, and then we'll look back to you. But Michelle, what's in the works for you?
yeah, I was just going to hype up Traci for a second, and she's now represented by Andrea Brown Literary Agency, so the same as where I'm at too. So yeah, congrats to Traci. That's a big thing that works. Yeah, and then she now has an agent, and we're agency siblings. So yes, looking forward to many more books from Traci.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I have two other books coming out this year. One is in August called Stay Angry Little Girl, and that one is inspired by A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. And which is, as we've talked about before on Storytime, one of my favorite childhood books growing up.
Yeah.
And I illustrated that one. And then the last book I have coming out this year is called Goodnight Sounds, written by Debbie S. Miller and illustrated by me. And that one is more of like a lullaby book that takes you through different settings and the sounds in each of them that help people fall asleep. So yeah, please keep an eye out for those two.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Now coming back, highlights. What are some of the highlights from?
Yeah,
I feel
well,
like it's always fun.
Yeah, one of the highlights for me was that I actually went and did a school visit in San Francisco back at the school, Spring Valley School, which is the school that had turned Mamie Tape away. And so it's still a school. It is actually the oldest continuously operating school in California. And that was a really special moment to bring that story there and share it with the students there. And in a way, it was like bringing Mamie back to that school, right? And and they do acknowledge that history. So I really applaud the staff and administration there. They have a plaque that about this history in their school. So that was very special. And then I also had a chance to go back to the school that rose up from the Chinese segregated school, also in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah. So then that was a very special visit as well.
Wow. Yeah. No, those are really like some amazing. And I like that they've acknowledged, like you're saying, this is a plaque. There's some this acknowledgement of that history, which I feel like some places, some museums that I've visited at times is a little hard because there isn't that acknowledgement. And I think the missions being some of those is you go and it's just no mention of the devastation that they may have caused or any of that. And sometimes you wonder, it's like, I think beginning of healing is that acceptance of that, and then how can we move forward from that?
Yeah, to acknowledge the past, but learn from that, right? Learn from that and move forward. So
right.
And I think something really special about that visit that Traci showed me afterwards was the kids really understood the story. I remember in the little interview clips that you had posted afterwards, that there were kids talking about the story and talking about what it meant for them to be a person of color or Asian American attending this school, given the history. And I thought that was just a really powerful reminder that kids are smart, they're brilliant, and they can understand difficult topics and challenging events in history.
Oh
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, they really do get it, right? And I think that it's really, that is really the goal, right? Too, like with the book, is like the kids get it to share this history, and then they see it and they understand it, and
Yeah, no, kids are amazing, really. And one of the things I think, we've been having, there's like so many situations we know it's been happening with the universities right now, as students have, been showing us the way, leading the way. And I feel like um, when you hear some of the interviews, because you're thinking, oh, like, oh, the media at times portrays these students as, oh, just university kids being university kids. But then when you listen to the interview, actually listen to what they're saying, the way they articulate the issues, it's like, oh my goodness. I remember this one time as I was teaching a fourth grade class, and we had a guest coming, and so like it's just like, oh, let's prep the kids, let's talk about this, gender pronouns and all of that and everything, and went through. And honestly, by the end of it, the kids are like, why wouldn't you? And they had everything right on, using the correct pronouns and everything. And I was like, I think this lesson was more for me than it was for them, because they get it and they can, express it so well. And just so, yeah, like, just to speak to your point, really, like, it just, kids know so much than we give them credit for. And I think kudos to, is it Belgium? It was in the news recently. They're reducing the voting age to 16 or something.
Oh, that's great.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just like listening to that. I didn't know. I think either it's passed or it's in the works. It should be coming through soon. So exciting. I wonder if that could ever happen here. Or
Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Yeah, but yeah, the kids really get it, and I think that's why, like this story about Mamie Tape, right? It's a serious topic, but and there are a lot of books, in this kind of genre, but kids get it, and it's not too early to have these kinds of conversations with kids, and the earlier the better in a way, because then it's just like it normalizes it for them, and that's just right. It's not, and it's something that becomes more part of their way they identify, or the way they see the world, and
right. Yeah, no, absolutely, because it does, it gives them the language to be able to, and to express themselves or to articulate themselves even better. And then also that whole idea of windows and mirrors, and giving them like an opportunity to, for empathy and building empathy and all of that. So yeah, no, this is such a valuable book, valuable lesson, and I hope that it ends up on many bookshelves in many classrooms. And I hope that many educators too read, and like caregivers read to the kids. I hope if you're looking for a gift, I hope that this is one that we pick out and gift and tell this story, and really because it is the beginning. Once we learn, you've all mentioned, like once we begin to learn, then we can now take this story and just continue to learn and grow as individuals, and appreciating, of course, the progress made, but realizing too that there's a lot of work to be done. Any closing remarks from you too before we head on out today? Michelle, would you want to kick us off?
Sure. I actually wanted to share one more page from the end of the book.
Yes,
before
please.
we leave. But yeah, I will talk about my closing remarks at the time. Also, check out the back matter, because it talks about a lot of Traci's research into this book, including all of the interviews that she did. But yeah, as Traci mentioned at the beginning, when we looked at the first end papers and Mamie inside with her dog, and then the ending end papers, we wanted to show something different. So I showed the gate open and Mamie and her brother going to school at that Chinese school that they helped open. So my closing remark, I think, would be, kind of the essence of this image, which is that even though change might come slowly and might not come exactly in the way you want or in the timeline you want, that everything starts with a single step, and their actions led to the opening of that Chinese school. And so I think I would encourage readers reading this story to just be inspired by Mamie and her family's bravery, and to not give up when standing up for yourself or for something you believe in.
Thank you. Yeah, no, appreciate that. How about you, Traci?
Yeah, I really echo what Michelle says. I really feel that's kind of the takeaway message, hopefully, of this book, and for kids to realize that they too can be change makers. Mamie was 8 years old, and so you're not too young, right? You have, and it doesn't have to be something big and monumental necessarily like this. In anything, whatever you're doing in your daily life, you can be a change maker too. And just be brave, take that first step, and know that even small steps make a difference.
I love that. I love that. Thank you both so much for coming to Storytime, for creating this wonderful book, really for telling this story, because it is an important one. And yeah, like it has, I'm inspired to read more and find out more about this amazing person, because I really didn't. And thank you so much. Your research, Traci, just, I was looking at that picture. Michelle, when you put up the graphic just now, it reminded me, I think it's a photo of Mamie in 1957, just after Brown versus Board of
Yeah.
Education. Thinking that connection to and all that, it was just fantastic, really. Everybody joining in, just a reminder again that we've been in discussion with Traci Huahn and of course Michelle Jing Chan. Thank you so much for being here with us today on Storytime. Please, if you have any questions, do send them our way and we'll make sure that get them to Traci and Michelle and we can get you those responses. But most of all, I hope that you find this book at your local library. Find it where you find books, and of course, just continue to encourage our little ones to read. And one thing that you mentioned, Michelle, I think, was reading picture books as adults, because it breaks down these big topics into such consumables, right? Like, so you're able to really just take, because a lot of times we're trying to think, how do I explain this to kids? But picture books usually do that for us already. So I hope that this sparks conversations wherever you are. And yeah, it's never too early, like Traci mentioned. It's never too early to start these big conversations, because they are important. Thank you so much for being here with us today on Storytime. Thank you to our guests for joining us, Michelle and Traci. I'll see you in the backstage. But for now, we'll be right back after this short break. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank
Hola, my name is Shamile Sayed Mendez, and I am the author of Where Are You From, Furia, and many other books for young readers. You're watching Story Time with Mr. Limata.
Welcome back. Thank you indeed. Shamila Syed Mendez, author, creator of many wonderful books. I hope that you do find them at the local library. And of course, you can see her conversation with us here on Storytime and get to enjoy all those lovely books. Thank you for being here with us on Storytime. This has been Storytime for today. I felt like we could go on with Michelle and Traci, because there's still so much more that I would love to talk about that book. But of course, find it at your local library, find it where you find books, and let's continue this conversation. Let's continue this discussion. And yeah, let's also remember, I know there are a lot of people out there doing amazing work. And so as you're doing all of that, I hope that you take that moment to pause and appreciate the progress that has been made, so we can still, remain energized to move on and keep the fight for the next day. Thank you so much for joining us here on Storytime. This has been Storytime. A big thank you to our guests for today joining us, Traci Huahn and of course Michelle Jing Chan, joining us early morning to be here with us and talk about their amazing book, Mamie Tape, Fights to Go to School. Thank you indeed for being here. Have yourselves a wonderful day. To everybody that was joining in whether live or indeed joining us later on for the recordings, we thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate the time you take to be here, and of course to help the kids log on and sign into Storytime. This has been Storytime for today. Much love from me, and I will see you again tomorrow when we are back with another exciting book, and it says Two Together. This one coming to us from Brendan Wenzel. Do join us, and of course we'll be reading it with permission of the publishers, Chronicle Books of San Francisco. Have yourselves a wonderful day, have yourselves an inspired day, and I hope that you look into Mamie Tape a little bit more later. Thank you so much for being here. Much love from me, and I will catch you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Story time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. oh. It brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Limata. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing. Story time with Mr. Limata, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be hearing.